I'm here with Gary Iacocca, third generation owner of YOCCO'S, the famous YOCCO'S. And Gary, thanks first of all for taking time out of your schedule to be with us. But YOCCO'S is such an institution in the area, and I'm excited to be here, first of all, because I'm a YOCCO fan. But tell us a little about the heritage and the history, because more than a hot dog, more than food, YOCCO'S really has played a significant role in the community as a tradition and being just around for a long time.
Well, that it has, Art. I mean, founded in 1922, it's a long time to be serving hot dogs in the world. My grandfather started it all in 1922. Actually, it's a funny story. The original store at 711 Liberty Street was really a store that was run by a friend of his. Didn't want to do it anymore. It was just a little candy tobacco store. And my grandfather, being a very entrepreneurial type person, said, "Oh, I'll take over." And so he tried it, and they sold cigars and some candy. And he told me a story a long time ago that he was out on the street talking with a friend of his, and a woman came by, most beautiful woman he's ever seen, he told me. Uh-oh. And she says, "Do you sell hot dogs here?" Now, why she asked that question, I haven't the faintest idea. But she said, "Do you sell hot dogs?" And he said, "No, we don't." And she said, "Oh, that's too bad." And she winked at him and walked on. The next day, he said he got hot dogs, put them on a grill, and, well, it's history. YOCCO'S started in those little days.
I had no idea I'd hear that kind of a story, and it's amazing to me how simple an idea can be, and yet now look how it's impacted not only your family but the entire community. So it started out in a small store in Allentown, and tell us a bit about how it progressed, because a lot of your family's involved.
Well, yes, I'm third generation, and what happened is over the years, YOCCO'S became very, very important to that neighborhood. That neighborhood had a lot of factories, the shoe factories, those kinds of things. And the hot dogs became something that all the workers would eat real quick. My father and my uncle, when they were little kids, they'd take a little cart up the street, and the guys at the factory would get about 5 minutes for lunch. They'd eat the hot dogs, and it just started to happen. And it wasn't called YOCCO'S. The name YOCCO'S never came about until the 40s.
That's probably an important point, because I think probably a question a lot of people might have is, how did it become the name YOCCO'S?
Well, I'll tell you in a sec how that ultimately became YOCCO'S, but the original store moved down to where we are actually currently at 625 Liberty Street back in the 30s. And at that time it was still called, it really didn't have a name, but people called it Liberty, it was called Liberty Grill. But everybody started to call it YOCCO'S, and the way that happened was, of course, the Italian name of Iacocca is YOCCO'Ca. There is no I, but right. YOCCO'Ca. And the Pennsylvania Dutch, the Germans, which were predominant in the area, they couldn't pronounce that. And it came out YOCCO. And so they always called it Mr. YOCCO, Mr. YOCCO'S place. And eventually, when my father and my uncle took over the business in the 40s, my grandfather and my grandmother went back to Italy to visit for many months, and they painted the name YOCCO'S on the window. And when my grandfather came back from Italy, he saw the name YOCCO'S on the window. He kind of shrugged his shoulders, and it's always been YOCCO'S ever since.
That's a pretty amazing story, just like with the girl winking, It's amazing how this whole name, which today is so well known, came to be. It's just really neat.
Oh, companies today pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop a name and a marketing plan and an image, and this just kind of came about. And of course, those are the best things. Those are the best ways that things happen.
Now, going back to where we just talked about and expanding past that, you started to have more than one store. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, back in late 40s, my father and my uncle opened up a little second place called the Dorneyville Golf Center. They were part of this golf center. They had the food. And of course, that was way out on the west end of Allentown in those days. Dorneyville was a long way from the center of Allentown. And that would open up on summers. In fact, that's where I learned to work. My family, we worked there every summer. My sisters, myself, my cousins, my friends, their friends. That's just how it is. We worked at the Dorneyville Golf Center. Then in 1972, the Dorneyville Golf Center closed and YOCCO'S opened up the location that is now at 2128 Hamilton Street, which we call YOCCO'S West because it was west of Allentown. And of course, that's still there today. Since then, we've opened 3 other locations. We now have 5 locations, one in Emmaus, one in Fogelsville, and then our newest location in Trexlertown right across from Air Products. And of course, I hope to open more locations. That's our goal, but it's difficult and it's tricky to do.
Now, just in wrapping up this segment, which we're going to have another segment, we're going to talk a lot more about this, but some of the things we talked about and you had brought up to me is the early marketing that did go on for YOCCO'S, basically even in having a pack of hot dogs to go.
Yeah, the YOCCO Doggy Pack, originally called the Picnic Pack. In fact, that's what it still says on the box. And if you notice, the box has not changed from when it was introduced in the 50s. It's still the same graphics, it's still the same box. Very famous. That's really what people send everywhere throughout the country. And what made it so unique is that it's a dozen hot dogs, a dozen rolls, and all the makings for YOCCO'S, including our chili sauce. Where else can you get a dozen rolls and a dozen hot dogs? Hot dogs come in packs of 8s and rolls come in packs of 10s.
Well, when you think about it, that's so innovative because today, you know, you go to the fast food places, you hear about value packs. Okay, well, this is back when? What year?
About mid-50s, 1953, 54.
I would say YOCCO'S had the first value pack that ever was.
Yeah, I mean, they did things way ahead of their time. Just even the slogans, hot dogs with a personality, and the hot dog man character that we have, those were all done in the 50s by very creative people.
Let's take a commercial break, okay? Because we are talking about YOCCO'S. We're talking with Gary Iacocca. We're learning about the history, not only about the hot dog, but about how YOCCO'S has impacted our community and continues to do so. So stay with us. We'll be right back after these messages.